A rancher spots an unconscious elderly woman becoming food for vultures. Then he does something shocking. Leave a comment telling me what you thought of this story with a rating from 0 to 10 and let me know what city you're watching from. I really want to know if you liked my story and get to know you better, so subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The scorching midday sun beat down relentlessly on the dirt road that cut through the vast rural properties on the outskirts of Oak Haven, Texas. James Stevens, 35, was riding his faithful white horse through the arid landscape, typical of the Texan countryside, when a disturbing scene abruptly interrupted his routine. There, in the middle of the dusty road, a human figure lay motionless under the brutal sun, surrounded by vultures circling menacingly in the crystal-clear blue sky. Approaching quickly, James identified an elderly woman, appearing to be about 67 years old, lying on her side on the hot earth, her simple clothes covered in dust, and her pale skin showing evident signs of severe dehydration. Beatrice Ann Miller was breathing with difficulty, her chapped lips whispering incomprehensible words as her consciousness wavered between lucidity and delirium. "Ma'am! Ma'am! Can you hear me?" shouted James, leaping from his horse and kneeling beside the woman. His experienced rancher's eyes, accustomed to dealing with rural emergencies, quickly assessed the gravity of the situation. Beatrice was clearly in critical condition, likely having been under that merciless sun for hours. With careful but urgent movements, James carried the elderly woman in his arms, placing her gently in the shade of a nearby tree. He offered her small sips of water from his canteen, watching as she struggled to swallow the precious liquid. During these first moments of aid, something in Beatrice's pained expression deeply touched the rancher's heart, awakening in him a sense of protection he couldn't rationally explain. "My children. Where are my children?" Beatrice murmured between groans of pain, her trembling hands desperately clinging to James's shirt. "They said they would come back for me. They said it was just for a few days." James felt a tightness in his chest upon hearing those words laden with abandonment and despair. He quickly decided to transport Beatrice to the Oak Haven Municipal Hospital, carefully adjusting her on his horse and holding her steady during the entire emergency ride into town. At the hospital, while the doctors examined Beatrice, James remained in the waiting room, unable to simply leave as an ordinary Good Samaritan would. Something about the situation bothered him deeply, a visceral feeling that this woman had been deliberately abandoned by the people who should have been caring for her. Dr. Charles Mason, the physician in charge, found James 3 hours later with a grave expression. "She's stable now, but she arrived in a state of severe malnutrition and extreme dehydration. From what we can gather, she had been lost for at least 4 days. We haven't been able to contact any family members yet." 4 days. James felt indignation swell in his chest. How does a woman her age get lost for so long without anyone looking for her? The next few hours revealed disturbing fragments of Beatrice's story. Nurses discovered documents in her purse indicating she had recently lived in Dallas with her children. Phone numbers listed as family contacts were either disconnected or simply no one answered the hospital's repeated calls. When Beatrice finally fully awoke, her first words were a desperate plea. "Please don't send me back to that terrible place. They said it was temporary, but I saw it in their eyes. They don't want me to come home." James approached the hospital bed, watching as Beatrice's eyes shone with tears of humiliation and deep hurt. "Mrs. Miller, can you tell me what happened? How did you end up on that road?" Between choked sobs, Beatrice narrated a story that broke the hearts of everyone present. Her 3 children, all successful entrepreneurs in the capital, had decided to place her in a long-term care facility without proper consultation. During the transport, taking advantage of a rest stop, she had desperately fled, walking aimlessly along rural roads in an attempt to return to any place she could call home. "I dedicated 40 years of my life caring for others as a nurse," she said with a trembling voice. "I raised my 3 children alone after my husband abandoned us. I worked double shifts so they could study. I sacrificed so they could have all the opportunities I never had. And now they think I'm a burden." James's outrage grew with every word. As a rancher, raised on the traditional Texan values of respecting one's elders, this situation represented an intolerable affront to everything he believed in. Impulsively, he made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. "Mrs. Miller, if you'll accept, I'd like to offer you a place to stay at my ranch until you can sort out your situation. I have a large house, trustworthy staff, and it would be an honor to care for you temporarily." Beatrice looked at James with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief, as if she couldn't believe a stranger was offering the kindness her own children had denied her. "But why would you do this for me? You don't even know me." "Because it's the right thing to do," James replied simply, his words filled with an unshakable moral conviction. "And because I believe everyone deserves dignity and care, especially someone who has dedicated their entire life to caring for others." That afternoon, as James helped Beatrice onto his horse for the return to the ranch, neither of them imagined that this spontaneous act of compassion would trigger a series of events that would transform not only their lives, but also reveal hidden truths connecting their destinies in ways impossible to predict. What had begun as a simple act of kindness was about to become a journey of profound discoveries, unexpected conflicts, and revelations that would forever change their understanding of family, loyalty, and the mysterious threads that weave human destiny. Beatrice's arrival at the Stevens Ranch caused an immediate stir among the employees. James watched with growing discomfort the suspicious expressions of his workers as he helped the elderly woman dismount the horse. Manny Garcia, the property's foreman for 15 years, approached with evident concern etched on his sun-wrinkled, tan face. "Boss, with all due respect, but are you sure about what you're doing?" Manny questioned, taking off his leather hat and scratching his graying head. "The whole town's going to be talking about this. A strange woman, no known family. It could spell trouble." James felt irritation rising in his chest, but kept his voice calm and firm. "Manny, this lady needs care, and we're in a position to provide it. I'm not going to abandon someone in need because of gossip." Beatrice remained silent beside the horse, her tired eyes scanning the property with a mix of gratitude and apprehension. The ranch was impressive, with a 2-story main house painted white, surrounded by well-kept gardens and a wide porch with rocking chairs. Organized corrals, clean stables, and green pastures stretched as far as the eye could see. "Mrs. Miller, let me show you where you'll be staying," James said, offering his arm to support her. "Maria Lopez, our cook, has prepared the guest room for you." Maria Lopez, a robust woman of 55 with kind eyes, welcomed Beatrice with genuine hospitality, a stark contrast to the coldness shown by the other employees. "Welcome, Mrs. B. I've prepared a warm bath and clean clothes for you. You must be exhausted after everything you've been through." The room set aside for Beatrice was simple but comfortable, with a double bed covered by a colorful patchwork quilt, an old solid wood wardrobe, and a window overlooking the property's orchard. For the first time in days, Beatrice felt truly safe during dinner served in the large kitchen of the main house. Beatrice shared more details about her previous life. She had worked as a nurse at Dallas General Hospital for 4 decades, specializing in the care of elderly and terminal patients. Her medical knowledge was vast and practical, acquired through years of direct experience with the most diverse clinical cases. "I always believed that caring for others was my calling," she said, distractedly stirring the creamy potato soup Maria had prepared. Even after I retired, I continued to help neighbors with minor health problems. My children said I was wasting my time on people who weren't worth it. James noted the bitterness that showed in Beatrice's voice when she mentioned her children. Did they really believe that? Or were they just annoyed because you dedicated time to other people? I think they never understood my need to feel useful, Beatrice replied, her eyes filling with restrained tears. After I retired, they started treating me like an old piece of furniture, something that took up unnecessary space in their organized and prosperous lives. In the first few weeks of living together, James began to notice concerning behaviors in Beatrice. She had episodes of mental confusion, especially in the morning, when she would wake up disoriented and call for people who apparently weren't there. During these moments, she seemed to regress to earlier periods of her life, talking to imaginary patients or looking for non-existent medical instruments. "Maria, have you seen my stethoscope? I need to check on Mr. Johnson before his family arrives," Beatrice would say, rummaging through drawers and closets with desperate urgency. "His lungs are congested, and I can't let it go unnoticed." Maria Lopez developed a motherly patience with these episodes, gently redirecting Beatrice to the present reality without ever making her feel embarrassed or diminished. "Mrs. B, how about we have some coffee on the porch? Mr. James said he'd like to talk to you about the medicinal plants in the garden." Gradually, James discovered that Beatrice's knowledge of traditional medicine was extraordinary. During a walk around the property, she identified dozens of plants with therapeutic properties, explaining in detail their applications and preparation methods. Her eyes shone with renewed passion when she spoke of herbs that could treat everything from simple headaches to complex digestive problems. "This one here is milk thistle," she said, pointing to a plant with small, bitter leaves. "Excellent for liver and gallbladder problems, and over there, that yarrow is for inflammation and healing." I learned all this from my maternal grandmother, who was a midwife and healer in the hill country. Beatrice's transformation was remarkable. As she felt more secure and valued on the ranch, her episodes of confusion significantly decreased, replaced by an impressive lucidity and a renewed sense of purpose. She began to discreetly care for the minor health problems of the employees, treating everything from infected cuts to chronic back pain with homemade remedies prepared with local plants. However, Beatrice's presence on the ranch did not go unnoticed by the conservative community of Oakhaven. Rumors began to circulate in the church prayer circles, at the central market, and in the town bars. Some people questioned James's true intentions, suggesting inappropriate motives for housing an unknown woman. "It's not natural for a single man of 35 to take care of a strange old woman without wanting something in return," commented Mrs. Gable, the owner of the busiest general store in town, to anyone who would listen. There must be some hidden agenda in all this. James felt the weight of these malicious comments every time he visited the town for business. Curious glances followed him through the streets, and conversations would abruptly stop when he approached. The social pressure began to affect his confidence in his decision, planting seeds of doubt that grew silently in his mind. The situation became even more complicated when Father Anthony, a respected leader of the local Catholic community, requested a private meeting with James. The meeting took place in the sacristy of the main church, a solemn environment that intensified the gravity of the conversation that was to follow. "My son, I understand your good intentions, but I must warn you about the consequences of your actions," said Father Anthony, his hands clasped on the old wooden table. "The community is concerned about this situation. Some influential families are questioning your character and your motives." James felt his blood boil, but he maintained the respect due to the clergyman. "Father, all I did was offer shelter to a person in need. There is nothing inappropriate or questionable about my conduct." "I believe in your sincerity," the priest replied, But appearances matter in a small community like ours. Perhaps it would be better to find a more appropriate solution for the lady's situation. That night, James returned to the ranch, tormented by internal conflicts he never imagined he would face when he decided to help Beatrice. The social pressure was becoming a heavy burden, testing his determination to do what he considered right, regardless of others' opinions. Beatrice, with her sensitivity sharpened by decades of caring for vulnerable people, immediately noticed James's anguish. During dinner, she broached the subject with a maternal delicacy that deeply touched the rancher's heart. "James, son, am I causing problems for you?" she asked. Her eyes full of understanding and genuine concern. "If my presence is harming your reputation in town, I can leave. I don't want you to suffer consequences for being kind to me." Beatrice's generosity and selflessness moved James beyond words. Here was a woman who, even after being abandoned by her own children and rescued by him, was primarily concerned with the well-being of her benefactor. At that moment, he understood that he had found something much more precious than a simple charitable cause. He had found a genuine human connection based on mutual care and deep respect. But the challenges ahead would test this connection in ways neither of them could foresee. James's decision to keep Beatrice on the ranch, despite social pressures, strengthened the bond between them. But it also triggered consequences that neither of them expected. On Monday morning, 3 weeks after Beatrice's arrival, a black car with Dallas plates parked in front of the main gate of the property. 3 elegantly dressed people got out. 2 middle-aged men and a woman, all with determined and hostile expressions. "It must be her children," murmured Maria Lopez, peering through the kitchen window with evident concern. "Mrs. B is in the orchard picking herbs. We'd better warn her before they see her." James watched the visitors approach the main house with an arrogant posture and calculated movements. The oldest, a portly man of about 45, took the lead, knocking on the door with excessive authority. When James answered, he was met with an evaluative and condescending gaze. "We are the children of Beatrice Ann Miller," the man declared without ceremony. "My name is Gerald Miller. This is my brother Henry and our sister Marissa. We've come to get our mother. We know she's here." "Good morning," James replied, maintaining his composure despite the evident hostility. "Your mother is fine and safe, but I believe you should talk to her before making any decisions." Marissa, a thin woman in expensive clothes and a disdainful look, stepped forward. "We have nothing to talk about. Our mother suffers from mental confusion and cannot make decisions for herself. We have legal documents that prove our guardianship over her." The mention of legal documents hit James like a punch to the gut. During these weeks, he had witnessed Beatrice's growing lucidity, her practical wisdom, and her ability to care for other people. The idea that these children could use claims of mental incapacity to control her was revolting. "You abandoned your mother," James said, his voice thick with restrained indignation. "She almost died of thirst and starvation on a road. How can you now claim to be concerned for her well-being?" Gerald laughed with bitter cynicism. "Don't give us moral lessons, kid. Our mother ran away during an authorized medical transport. We had no choice but to place her in a specialized institution. She's a danger to herself." At that moment, Beatrice appeared on the porch, carrying a basket of medicinal plants she had collected. Upon seeing her children, her face visibly paled and her hands began to tremble. The fear in her eyes was so intense that James felt the urge to physically shield her from their presence. "Mom, it's time to go home," said Henry, the middle child, with false kindness. "You've caused enough trouble for this gentleman. Let's resolve this situation once and for all. I don't want to go back." Beatrice replied, her voice weak but determined. "Here I am respected. I have a purpose. I am not a burden to anyone." Marissa let out a cruel laugh. "Purpose? Mom, You're 67 years old and have obvious cognitive problems. What purpose can you have other than to rest properly in an institution that knows how to care for your special needs? The cruelty of those words made James completely lose his patience. Your mother has extraordinary medical knowledge. She has been helping people in the region with health problems that conventional doctors couldn't solve. She is a valuable and capable person. Medical knowledge, Gerald guffawed. She makes up remedies with weeds and talks to imaginary people. That is exactly what proves our claim of mental incapacity. Over the next few hours, the tension on the ranch became unbearable. Beatrice's children remained on the property, alternating between subtle legal threats and manipulative attempts to convince their mother to accompany them voluntarily. Beatrice took refuge in her room, clearly terrified at the prospect of returning to their control. James urgently sought lawyers in the region, discovering with horror that Beatrice's legal situation was extremely vulnerable. The children possessed medical documents attesting to episodes of mental confusion, and the fact that she had fled during an official transport strengthened their claims of incapacity. The law favors direct relatives in cases like this, explained Mr. Frank Larson, a lawyer specializing in family law. To contest the guardianship, we would need independent psychiatric evaluations and a lengthy process that could take months. In the meantime, they have the legal right to take her. The news devastated James, who felt powerless against the legal bureaucracy that protected people willing to use the system against a vulnerable elderly woman. That night, while Beatrice's children stayed at a hotel in town, he had a painful conversation with her in the ranch garden. "James, I can't run anymore," Beatrice said, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. "They will drag me back, and I don't want you to suffer legal consequences for trying to protect me. You've already done more for me than anyone was ever obligated to do." "I don't accept this," James replied with steely determination. "There has to be a legal solution. I won't let them mistreat you again." It was then that Beatrice revealed a secret that would completely change the perspective of the situation. In a trembling voice, she told him that she had donated her entire life savings to charities, leaving herself completely without financial resources. The children had discovered this donation and were furious, especially because they had expected to inherit that money. "They're not worried about me," she said bitterly. "They're furious because they won't get an inheritance. Placing me in a cheap institution is a way to punish me for the donation and ensure I never have control over any resources again." This revelation illuminated the true motivations of Beatrice's children, but also further complicated the legal situation. If she had no resources of her own, she would depend completely on their goodwill or that of third parties to survive with dignity. During the night, James was awakened by screams coming from Beatrice's room. Rushing to check on her, he found her in the midst of a terrible nightmare, sweating and desperately calling for her own mother. When she finally woke up, it took several minutes for her to recognize where she was. "Son, I had a terrible dream," she said, gripping James's hands with desperate force. "I dreamed I was back in that horrible institution, alone in a small room, waiting for visitors who never came." James stayed by her side until dawn, offering comfort and security through his constant presence. During these intimate hours, Beatrice shared memories of her youth as a nurse, recounting moving stories of patients she had cared for with exemplary dedication. "I always believed my mission in life was to care for those in need," she said, watching the sunrise through the window. "It's ironic that now, when I'm the one who needs care, it's strangers who show compassion, while my own family sees me as a problem to be solved." The next morning brought an unexpected crisis that would change the course of everything. During breakfast, James began to feel intense chest pains, accompanied by nausea and difficulty breathing. The accumulated stress of the past few weeks, combined with the emotional pressure of the situation with Beatrice, had taken a physical toll he hadn't realized until that critical moment. Beatrice, immediately recognizing the symptoms, took control of the situation with impressive medical competence. She administered improvised medicines with plants from her medicinal garden, applied first aid techniques she had learned over decades of hospital experience, and coordinated the urgent transport to the hospital with a professional calm that completely contradicted her children's claims of mental incapacity. "Maria, prepare a tea with holy thistle leaves and add 3 drops of valerian tincture," she instructed with unquestionable medical authority. "Manny, bring the car around immediately. I need to monitor his vital signs during the drive to the hospital, during the transport." Beatrice kept James conscious and stable through advanced medical techniques that clearly demonstrated her lucidity and professional competence. Her transformation from a frail old woman into an experienced medical professional was so dramatic that even her children, who had arrived at the ranch that morning, were visibly shaken to witness their mother's unquestionable competence. At the Oak Haven Hospital, Beatrice monitored every medical procedure performed on James with the precision of a seasoned professional. Dr. Charles Mason, the same doctor who had treated Beatrice weeks before, was impressed with the technical knowledge the elderly woman demonstrated throughout the emergency process. "Mrs. Miller, your performance was exemplary," he said after stabilizing James. "Your initial interventions probably saved his life. Where did you learn such advanced techniques? 40 years working in medical emergencies teaches you a lot," she replied modestly. But her eyes shone with the renewed pride of feeling useful and professionally respected again. Beatrice's children remained in awkward silence in the hospital corridor, witnessing a competence in their mother they had chosen to ignore for years. Gerald, especially, seemed visibly shaken to realize that his claims of mental incapacity would not stand up to the scrutiny of any medical professional who had witnessed Beatrice's exemplary performance. As James recovered, Beatrice naturally assumed the role of primary caregiver, monitoring his vital signs, administering medications, and offering the kind of personalized attention that only decades of medical experience could provide. Her dedication deeply moved the entire hospital staff. "It's amazing how she knows exactly what to do at every moment," commented the head nurse Sandra, with genuine admiration. "I rarely see family members with so much practical knowledge of medical care." Dr. Mason, intrigued by Beatrice's competence, decided to investigate her professional history more deeply. What he discovered in the regional hospital archives left him absolutely stunned. Beatrice Ann Miller had been one of the most respected nurses in the region for decades, specializing in complicated births and neonatal care, with a history of exemplary dedication that included hundreds of lives saved. "Mrs. Miller, were you a midwife here in the region?" he asked, consulting old documents he had requested from the hospital archives. "Yes, doctor. I was a midwife and obstetric nurse for over 20 years before I transferred to Dallas," she replied, a shadow of nostalgia passing through her eyes. "I helped bring more than 500 children into the world in the Oak Haven area and neighboring towns. It was then that Dr. Mason made a discovery that would change everything forever. Searching through the oldest records, he found Beatrice's name as the midwife responsible for the birth of James Stevens, born exactly 35 years ago in a complicated home birth on the Stevens family ranch. "Mrs. Miller," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, "do you remember the birth of a boy named James, son of Mrs. Helen Stevens, 35 years ago? It was a difficult birth during a terrible storm, and you saved both the mother and the baby when it seemed both would be lost." Beatrice was silent for long moments, her eyes filling with tears as long-buried memories resurfaced. Slowly, she turned to look at James asleep in the hospital bed, and her expression transformed into a mixture of disbelief and profound understanding. My God, she whispered, her hands trembling as she approached the bed. The boy with the green eyes, the baby who could hardly breathe. I remember. I spent the whole night caring for him, singing to him to calm him down. Helen was so scared. The revelation hit everyone present like a thunderbolt. James, the man who had saved Beatrice from the dusty road, was the same baby she had brought into the world and saved during his first moments of life. Fate had intertwined their lives in a way so profound and poetic that it seemed impossible to be mere coincidence. When James awoke and learned the truth, he was silent for long minutes, processing the magnitude of that revelation. The woman he had rescued, moved by an inexplicable impulse of protection, was the same person who had ensured his survival at birth. It was as if an invisible circle of mutual care and protection was finally closing after 3.5 decades. "Beatrice," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Now I understand why I felt such a strong connection when I found you on that road. My soul recognized the person who gave me my first chance at life." The news of the extraordinary connection between James and Beatrice spread quickly through the town of Oakhaven. The story deeply touched the heart of the conservative community that had previously criticized the rancher's decision to house the elderly woman. People who had spread malicious rumors now felt ashamed for having doubted an act of kindness that was revealed to have such deep roots in destiny. Father Anthony was one of the first to visit James at the hospital to apologize publicly. "My son, forgive my lack of faith in divine providence. I see now that God was moving both of your hearts so that you would meet again when you both needed it most." Faced with the extraordinary revelation and the unequivocal demonstration of Beatrice's mental competence, her children found themselves in an untenable position. The claims of mental incapacity seemed ridiculous in the face of a woman who had saved a life with exemplary medical precision. Moreover, the touching story of the connection between her and James had won the sympathy of the entire community. Marissa was the first to back down. "Mom, maybe we were hasty in our assessment," she said, avoiding direct eye contact. "If you're well cared for here—" "No," Beatrice interrupted with a renewed dignity that impressed everyone. "You will not decide anything more about my life. I spent decades sacrificing for you, and when I needed support, you abandoned me like a wounded animal. James offered me what you never could: respect, affection, and the chance to feel useful again. Gerald tried one last emotional manipulation. Mom, we are your blood family. This man is a stranger, however kind he may be. Family is not defined by blood but by care," Beatrice replied with wisdom gained through suffering. "James has treated me like a son would from the first day. You treated me like a burden. The choice is obvious." In the following days, as James fully recovered, Beatrice took legal steps to ensure her independence. With the support of Dr. Mason, who officially attested to her full mental capacity, she revoked all documents granting guardianship to her children and established James as her legal representative in case of future emergencies. Beatrice's transformation was extraordinary. The frail and confused woman who had been found on the road had once again become a respected professional, sought after by families throughout the region for specialized medical care. She established a small, makeshift clinic on the ranch, where she treated needy people using traditional knowledge, combined with her formal medical experience. "It's amazing how she has rejuvenated," commented Maria Lopez, watching Beatrice care for a child with a high fever. "It seems she has found her reason for living again." James, deeply moved by the journey they had both taken, decided to formalize Beatrice's situation in a special way. During a simple ceremony in the ranch chapel, in the presence of the entire community that now supported them, he publicly declared his eternal gratitude for the woman who had saved his life twice. Once at birth, and again by teaching him the true meaning of compassion. "Beatrice is not just a guest in my home," he said before all present. "She is the mother that fate gave me, the person who secured my first breath, and who now teaches me how to live with purpose. This ranch is as much hers as it is mine forever." Beatrice, wearing a simple but elegant dress that Maria Lopez had sewn especially for the occasion, cried with joy upon hearing those words. For the first time in years, she felt truly at home, surrounded by people who valued her for who she was, not for what she possessed. Beatrice's children left Oakhaven that same week, unable to achieve their original goals. The community that had once questioned James's intentions now celebrated the extraordinary story of reunion and mutual care between two people united by destiny. Months later, as Beatrice's medicinal plants flourished abundantly in the ranch garden and children played in the orchard while she prepared her traditional remedies, James watched with deep gratitude how a simple act of compassion had transformed not just two lives, but an entire community. He had learned that sometimes we save the very people who once saved us, and that true love, whether between a mother and son, or between strangers who become family, always finds a way to blossom, even in the most unlikely circumstances. The Stevens Ranch had become a symbol of hope for the entire region, proving that family is built through mutual care, and that it is never too late to find the home we have always been searching for in the hearts of those who value us exactly as we are. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment on what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.